Hey, what's happening, people? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna look in food photography. This is a niche many people tend to overlook and is very rewarding. With a little bit of preparation and understanding of light, you can up your skills and you can increase your client base. Without any further ado, let's jump on in and I'll explain how I use two lighting setups. Right now I have two systems to be easier to differentiate the setups, and this pretty much cover 90% of every situation you might encounter in food photography. These setups are quite different because one is based on hard lighting and the other one is with soft lighting. For my hard light setup, I have three lights. They are Godox lights. I have an AD200 Pro II, the new light. I have an AD100 and an AD300. This all cover this shoot pretty well because I don't have any large modifiers, and or even like if I close down my aperture to f16, they are still good to go. My second setup, I will have two lights. And I'm using Profoto. I'm gonna have the Profoto A10 on the softbox, and I'll have the Profoto A2 bare flash as my hard light to bring some specularity to the image. Many restaurants in the last few years, they tend to have this nice and dark and moody light, and we'll try to match that kind of atmospheres. We're gonna have a nice dark and moody lighting setup for this tutorial. I'm using some sushi rolls because they tend to last a little bit longer on the table for the photo shoot. You have to be very careful when you're shooting food photography. You have to move fast because the food breaks down right away and you don't have too much time. Is why you have to have your lights set in place, use just the plates to focus your lights, and you bring the food in the last moment. I have a little setup here on the table. I'm using these backdrops just to keep the color consistent, and I'm thinking to get this nice and dark mood lighting on these sushi rolls. Of course, when you have a multiple light setup, you have to position and set up each light individually. I have my first light for this setup. I will start with my main light, which in my case is the AD300. I have it with a 5-degree grid, and I'm shooting to a half-stop diffusion material just to tone down the specularity a little bit, but I still want specularity in the pictures, which I'll add later. Of course, when you're doing nice and dark moody photography, you start with your main light through the back. You're gonna backlight your dish. I have the light pretty low and I am trying to light the side of the dish. I want to have some nice light and shadow pattern on my plate because it will create interest. Besides the nice setups you're gonna have on your food photography, like you're designing the plate and designing the setup, the second hero of the shot are gonna be your lighting patterns, because you can sculpt with light the plate and make it very interesting. Flat light doesn't add to the dish, but if you create some nice highlights and nice shadows to increase the contrast and make the food pop, will make the whole image very, very interesting. Hard light is your friend because hard light, it increases the color saturation and also it increases the contrast and make everything nice, rich and vibrant. I'm using the Canon R5 with a 100mm macro lens. I'm shooting from an elevated position because I want to get as much of this setup in one frame. I will focus on the front of the plate on my first sushi roll because that has to be nice and crisp, and you're gonna have a nice blur background. It doesn't matter if you shoot at f8, f16 with a long telephoto lens like 100mm, the background always gonna be a blur. The depth of the field of this focal length is very shallow, even with a small aperture. After I position my camera, I focus on the front of the plate. I will switch my lens from autofocus to manual, and I will start adjusting my first light. Well, as when you have multiple lights set up, you have to adjust every single one at a time. And I have my AD300 to the back and to the side here because I want to create some nice light on the side of the plate, and I want the light to roll over, and I will have a nice transition between the highlights and shadow, and will create a more contrast and interest in the picture. I will start with right now I have my the AD300 with a 5-degree grid, which cuts lots of power. My camera, it is at f8, shutter speed 1/200, ISO 100. I'll take a picture, and I like where the light it is right now. It illuminates the edge of the plate, the side of the sushi rolls, and nice fades to shadow to the other side. Of course, you have to do some trial and errors to adjust your aperture and the light intensity, but that is just, you know, by case-by-case situation. Now, I like how I have my start here, and the second light, which I will bring into place, will be my fill light. The fill light, the AD100, I bounces off the ceiling right above the setup here, because I just want to lift up the shadows a little bit and even out the exposure. I don't want to have super dark shadows here. I want to still have some definition. I will turn my main light, the AD300, off, and I will just fire my fill light. The fill light will just open up the shadows, and I think right now I have the AD100 at 1/4 power, and it works really good. I like how it evens out the exposure, and I can move to my accent light. My accent light is the AD200 Pro, the new light, and I have the mag bin with one of his masking accessories. For the mag bin, just the straight line, because I want to create just a strip of highlights on top of my sushi roll to bring them, you know, to life and make the whole dish pop. I want to have highlights in the top and nice rollover lights to shadows to the side, because I think that play with the highlights and shadows creates interest in the picture, and you have to try to create the most interesting light on your photography all the time. On my AD200 Pro, I have the Fresnel head, and when I use this mag grip rubber band on the head, I see it covers the vents for the LED light. So if you want to use mag mod with the new AD200, I don't think they play that good. And also I see that it's a lot of light spilling on the side here, and I will use some black fabric to block the lighting spilling to the side, and I will take a shot. This is the hardest part, because I have to try to aim that light straight in the middle of the dish, and I need to line it up with my shot. Positioning this light, it takes a little time, because you have to make sure that the line is straight in the middle. I'm using this light masking from Magmod for this particular shoot, but you can use just a grid on a different dish and we'll do the same trick. But you want to focus the light to restrain so it doesn't spill everywhere. It's hard light, so it has to be a very tight pattern. Also, on the same side, I have this light flow reflector panel, very close to just outside the frame, because I want to catch some light from my main light, the AD300, and bounce it back. I just need to make sure that, special in the front of the dish, I have a light to keep it nice and bright. Now we have all three lights together. I'll take a couple of shots. I think everything looks really good for this short amount of time. The hard light enhances the color of the food. It brings contrast, and because we kind of like restrain all the main light with a 5-degree grid, and with my accent light with this mask from a lighting mask from Megmod, we carve into the image highlights and shadows, and it creates a lot of interest. The fill light is just, to open up the shadows. For a different dish, you can use just a reflector with a 10-degree grid, 15-degree grid, just to focus on the front if you have to. And this lighting pattern works on everything in photography, from product to people and every situation. This is always a nice and interesting light, and we just added the fill flash to open up the shadows. But it's a hard light with a nice rich color and super nice contrast. In product photography and food photography, you decide your f-stop. So I'm at f8, ISO 100, shutter speed 1/200, because I want just the lights to contribute to the picture. And the only way to adjust your light, you have to dial up the power up and down, or to get it where you need it. I'm not touching the camera. I put my lens on manual focusing, so this stays put in place. I'm just adjusting the light from my remote or on the back of the light to make sure I get the right output. I will finesse a little bit the position of the light to make sure that I'm aiming the light in right on the direction what I want, and this is it. After everything is in place, I can just bring different dishes and just play with the setup, and I'm not changing the light. You're gonna have a nice series with a matching light, so it looks more uniform for a whole product catalog. For my second lighting setup, I'm using these two flashes from Profoto. The Profoto A2 is a bare flash with a grid on it, and the A10 is with this softbox. I have the 28-inch Parapop softbox, which is my preferred softbox for any small flashes, round head flashes. I will start with my main light, the softbox. To the back and to the side, it comes in a 45 degrees to the dish, and is a 45 degrees top down to the table, because I want to have a nice graduation over the plate. It acts as my main and my fill, because its sheer size is bigger than the whole setup. I will take a picture to see where we are, and I still have some directionality because it's behind the subject and it's aimed down, but it's pretty much a very flat image. I'll position my accent light, the Profoto A2, to the side, but instead of doing the cross lighting, I will have it almost in the same angle as my softbox towards the front of the dish, because I still want to have that backlight look to bring out the specularity in the highlights. Because when you have specular highlights in food, special and meats, it looks, it makes the food looks very fresh and nice. As you guys saw from this tutorial, with 2 or 3 lights you can cover a lot of situation, and I can change the food with a product and will have the same look on the same setup. I think it's a very good idea to have a food photography in your portfolio, because it's very lucrative genre and will help you to get a lot of business. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please check out my channel for more lighting tutorials and gear reviews. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.